Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To some and peace out to the rest of. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. First, let me give a shout out and a thanks to all of my subscribers at the Jet Black Air Lounge, and especially to those who came through with extra, just on top of what they already pay for subscriptions. Um, I really want to give thanks to D. Smith for coming through so generously. He's the most recent one. He is not the only one, but he is the most recent. I want to give thanks to Ryan G as well. I want to thank those of you that have come through on Cash App as well from the time I've had it up. And this one, religion plays a part. But this is about where ethnicity, politics, and religion intersect. Uncle D did a live stream and he talked about a Palestinian lady or an Arabic speaking lady that said that Malcolm X would want black folks to stand with Palestine. And I want to commend his efforts, meaning Dennis's efforts, to remind us of the anti-black attitudes. But I want to also state this. Number one, Mr. Spurling, Muhammad did own slaves. He freed them. He owned them and then he freed them. And part of his ownership was to show people how they were to treat those that were captives, because at that time, captives, human slaves, were captives of war. Sometimes of kidnapping, but certainly they were captives of war. Arabs enslaved people in general. They did not single out black folks to enslave. Now, Arabs mostly enslaved each other, and we've already said that they started off as black. But they didn't single out a race. They mostly enslaved each other because they fought with each other. They didn't fight with a bunch of other people. They didn't even amass the armies to do that until the last rise of Islam. When I say the last rise, I'm talking about after the last revelation of it. When Muhammad, peace be to him, passed away, they began to expand outside of the peninsula. That's true. I'm going to tell you what Attorney Spurling did not say about that, and I want to clear up some misconceptions that black folks have, because I've been looking into the history myself of this. And I've talked about this before, even on another channel a long time ago, and I've forgotten some of what I knew back then. Nobody went into Black Africa at that time, what we would call Black Africa today, and conquered. It didn't happen. Nobody went into Southeast Asia and conquered at that time. That didn't happen. So the irony of it is that black folks, and the one group of people that don't tend to piss on our names and images and everything else, even when they do use skin bleach, were the ones that the Muslim armies didn't have to go into and conquer. They didn't even have to enter into them. Islam entered there by business and by trade. And people at the top of the society accepted it. And then people were able to follow their leaders into it after that point. Fighting within these areas that was religious was between the people of those areas. There were religious conflicts regarding empire and religion in Africa. They were between Africans. There were Muslims that went and said to certain other rulers, listen, you're not actually ruling by the Sharia, and start doing it or we're going to come and fight you. And then they fought. This did happen. This was between black folks. Arabs did not get involved in that. I don't even think they knew about it, to be honest with you. This is oftentimes not talked about. And an imam in Pittsburgh named Naeem Abdullah knows about this. There's another one. I forgot his name, but he fled to Mali. He's an imam. I think the FBI wants him, but Mali has said, no, he can stay here. He's talked about that. He's actually talked about Muslims that were freedom fighters in Africa and in the Americas against the slave trade. That also existed. I wish I could remember his name now. There's so much information, I keep forgetting stuff. But this is real. This black resistance and Muslim black resistance to slave trades with an S is real. I forgot the name of a Somali leader a long time ago that went into Zanzibar and drove out the Arabs and killed them even. And he freed Bantu slaves, not just black slaves, but Bantu slaves. They were not horners. They were wide-nosed, big-lip, jet black 4C hair having Negroes. And they had been captive by some light-skinned Omanis, even though most of them aren't that light-skinned. And he liberated them and killed whoever had enslaved them. Muslims have behaved all kinds of ways. Arabs have behaved in all kinds of ways. From egalitarian to racist. I've met some over the years that were biased against white people and couldn't stand them because of their colonization. They had no problem with us. They're not terribly common. I'm telling you they exist. What I want you to do is to not equate them with a society that actually did us wrong in the Americas. See, where I live, it's illegal to insult somebody based on race. Now, to be forced to pay, it actually takes witnesses. And you might even be thrown in jail. Now, that takes witnesses because any crime takes witnesses or some kind of evidence in order to get a conviction for the crime. That's any crime. Doesn't matter how bad it is. If you kill someone and there's no evidence, you got away with it in this life. In the next life, you're going to catch twice the punishment, though, because you got away with it here. But in this life, if there's no evidence, there's no evidence. You got away with it. That's how they operate here. And that's fair. It is now against the law. It became against the law in Tunisia shortly after a documentary exposed the racism of Tunisia. So Dennis Spurling was right to mention what was going on in Tunisia. It's just that that has largely been, that's a fire that has pretty much been put out. I don't mean in everybody's heart. I'm not going to sit up and tell you that. I'm telling you that in terms of the practice, that fire has been put out. Because Tunisia was about to start facing pressure from both the West and Gulf nations here to go ahead and put some laws in the books and enforce them that would protect darker people from bias and from racism. They were like, cut this mess out. You ain't white. Most of y'all ain't Arabs either. You're Amazigh. You're Berbers. And, that's the English term for the Amazigh people. And the Amazigh people come in every complexion, although the originals were black. That's true. I'm not telling you that you can get out there and afford to march for Arabs who are for Palestine. I'm not telling you that. I just recorded yesterday and uploaded and said, do not let anyone, no matter what they've done for us, come along and tell us to go and join an oppressor against someone they've been oppressing. Don't do that. If we needed to slap Arabs around, if we needed to do it, which we probably don't in many cases, not as a group, I mean, Well, no, I take that back. As a group, we would need to. In many individual cases, we would not. Same as with white folk. So if white folk are slapping Arabs around and slapping Latinos around, legally or extra legally, and then they ask us to come and join in, and we go and join in, now everybody's going to look at us and say, wait a minute, even if you were asked to do this, why the hell would you? White folks eventually going to start saying, why would you do that? Wait a minute, you already doing it. You asked me for my help. And they don't like black folks, and so I came and helped. Yeah, but we don't like you N-words either. We never did. We're the ones that actually got your own people to kidnap you. And we would have done worse to them if they didn't participate in this. Oh, yeah, we forced them to kidnap you. That's how we do that. We did that. We weren't slapping them around because they don't like you. We don't like you. We slapped them around because we don't like them. And you joined in and helped them. Why would you do that? And a person being slapped around would look at us and say, yeah, you hate me for not joining you against this violent mother cuss word here, but you joined this violent mother cuss word here against me. Even though he's only slapping me around because I'm not him. What I'm saying is that we may need to start doing some things to people independently of white folk. And for the most part, we don't need to slap them around. Shutting them out is enough. Nope. Do not come over here. That's our enemy over there. But you sided with them. Screw you. Y'all fight this on your own. We're going to sit back and watch with our popcorn. Not my problem. And don't try to come in my door again. I'm not playing around with y'all. See, that's the right response, the right relationship. Some people that are sitting up in Mr. Spurling's chat again are acting like what we should be doing is supporting a genocidal colonizer. No, we should not. Recently, in the Miami area, an Ashkenazi saw two Arabs and he took aim at them. And he did it because they were Arabs. He did not know that they were actually of the same faith as him. And these two Arabs that were actually of the same faith as the Ashkenazi took it upon themselves to say that it was a white supremacist crime against them because of their faith. No, it was against them because of their Arabness. And they even said death to Arabs. I didn't say that, they did. So the victims that were Arabs of the faith that the Ashkenazi claim they've always been on. It turns out, in other words, that some Zionists took each other out. Well, not to, but they fired, one fired shots at the other, but both of them blamed somebody else. But this was an internal fight based on mistaken identity. We should be sitting and saying, thank God for this. Listen, Lord, please turn oppressors against each other like this more and more often so we can build something. And they'll finally be busy with each other. The shoe will be on the other foot instead of them being able to divide and conquer. Lord, divide and conquer them for us while we build. If we knew how divided many other groups of people were, we would have capitalized and exploited these divisions because they try to do this with us. We would have been able to sit up and say to them certain things about how, and that's why I say it's good to learn about groups of people. You can keep them busy with each other while you work and do something constructive. Not because you hate them because they're who they are. You don't hate their DNA, but you could do this to them because, simply put, they can't see your DNA as equal, even if they don't hate you. See, some of you love dogs. Some of you love cats, but you see them as lesser creatures. That's how a lot of non-hateful and non-violent racists are to you. They don't think they're racist because they don't hate you. They just don't understand that you are not a lesser creature. You are as human as they are. And they keep forgetting that, benevolently forgetting your equality. That's something they've even trained us to do to ourselves. They've even trained other groups of people to do that to themselves. And the darker you are, the more effective the training is, because that's the way in which it's been focused. You will forget your own equality, and others will forget your equality. And that's when they don't hate you. And I have to learn and see that when it comes, I have to see that when it comes down to certain other groups. I myself have to remember that they were born as human as we are. They became dehumanized because of the training, but they weren't born that way. It's not an instinct. And they tend to, many people tend to think it's an instinct. Many Chinese people think that it's instinctive to be afraid of black people, despite the fact that we don't we don't pick on people that are from other races and harm them because of that. That's We'll fight with each other about politics and geography and things like that, but we don't turn around and start messing with the Chinese because of Chinese. We make jokes, and that's it. And that's usually in the States we might make a few jokes. And if we make jokes and they roast us back, we actually would say, you know what, that was pretty good, because we know I just got through roasting you. I just got through asking you if you can see. I just got through asking you if you can open your eyes. Do you even know what it is that you just cooked and served for me? So if you roasted me back and asked me if I need this big old nose to breathe because I live on a mountaintop or something like that, you know what I would say? Yeah, that's actually pretty good, because I just roasted you. I know you're fighting back. I understand that your DNA does not actually make you less than equal to me, but do you understand that about me? Because my nose is wide and my lips are big and my hair is 4C and my skin is dark, that I'm as human as you. Do you understand that? And that's where the difference comes in. And the funny thing about it is that there are many of us that are running around here loyal to the race and loyal to our women, and women ain't even race loyal like that. Many prefer men of their own. That's a preference, but they ain't race loyal like that. I used to say that Palestinian women and black women were two examples of women that actually disregard hypergamy when it comes down to the men of their enemies. They don't like them, because I thought at one point sisters didn't like white guys. I figured that my ambiguity, without something to offset and compensate for it, was one of the reasons that sisters gave me the trouble they gave me. I thought that was the case. I actually excused it when I finally remembered hearing about that. Then I excused it. 2017, I remember that. Last day of July. I remember that because the first day of August was when I turned around and recorded about it. That was when I recorded and I said, and that's because I'd had my memory jarred the day before. I recorded and I said, we got to understand something. We can talk all this black love all we want. There are going to be black folks that cannot marry somebody black. It's not an option for them. Then I began to hear about this black manosphere, and shortly after that, I became a bit more aware of Angry Man, I think it was. And something, Jordan Ramirez, I forgot his first name, but yeah, something Jordan Ramirez was talking about, certain ways in which men had to meet standards they weren't allowed to have and things like that. And I came into a lot of knowledge about this. Then Angry Man, then as far as I can remember, then I think coming across BGS. I'm talking 2017 going to 2018. And I had to accept, you know what? I can't, I was, and at this point I was unmarried again. I was like, you know what? I cannot be pursuing women of my own race anymore. And I don't think it's really going to matter what nationality it is either. I cannot continue doing this. As much as I'm against the racism of other races, I have to understand that when it comes down to sisters, I can't expect them to trust me. That's really what I thought was going on. The whole time I figured that's what it was. And then come to find out, no, they're not even race loyal. When they prefer their own race, they still aren't race loyal. They're driven more by dispreferences and distaste in other men than they are even by loyalty to their own. So the average white woman in Canada has something against Indian men far more than she actually likes and prefers white men. That's why most white men she would consider marrying. But if an Indian man tried to shoot a shot at her, she would be like, "Oh my God, what made him even think he had a chance? My self-esteem is so low now. I feel bad about myself because he thought he could." That's what happened. That's how it's been running. So getting back to whether or not we should be marching for others, and I've already stated we should not, but let's not be willing to join the oppressors and dogpiling on them either, because we would both be whooping that ass for two different reasons. And I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think so. This is a time where we can rest. Think of other strategies. But by the same token, I'm going to tell you guys, and I've stated before, the problem is not Islam itself. That is not why it is that our people face what we face. I've already told you, if you want to see black unity, you can see it amongst black Muslims. Northern Nigerians and the Muslims and Sudanese get along great. Excellently. Myron is not representative. Myron Gaines, fresh, is not representative of his people. He is not. He's not even partially representative of his people. When you look at him and you hear what he says, most Sudanese don't even know he exists because he doesn't want the attention of his own people. He'd get his behind kicked. He's actually counting on that. If you want to really make things as rough as possible, you start telling Sudanese about him, and don't act like he's representative of them. Act like, look, man, this guy's out here fouling you all's reputation. Y'all don't behave like this. Y'all don't even have a high profile like that. And look how this mother cuss word's acting. Check this nigga. He fears that. He doesn't want it to get back to his parents that, hey, look, everybody's calling us about this podcast you have. I bet they don't know about it. But Islam ain't the problem. He himself has actually left Islam, even if he didn't mean to, because he said, well, see, we only promote the fun parts of Islam, not the shady parts. Ain't no shady parts. A Muslim would tell you you're not allowed to call any parts of it shady. Even the parts that call for political domination of everybody else. We're not allowed to call that shady. Just like the HI relatives of ours will say, we got to return to the laws of the Most High Yah. We actually, as Muslims who know our religion, would agree. We would sit up and say, yeah, we have to return to the laws of the Most High. That's why we don't even apologize for the parts that call for absolute political domination, according to the Sharia. It ain't personal. It's because, you know what? God's rules trump everybody else's. He owns this. No matter how many light years into space you traveling in what direction in which you find, he owns that too. If he said that this particular planet is to be ruled by this set of rules and revelation, then that's what it's supposed to be. We agree. We agree as to whose rules are supposed to be in charge, whose rules trump everybody else's. Oh, yeah, we agree with that. So many people in the chat were like, just really about to go the complete opposite direction because of a woman and what she was saying about Malcolm X. And understand, I don't think that lady necessarily meant harm, but she's idealistic and young. And many of the young non-black Muslims do in fact want a true alliance, but they don't know how to go about it because their parents won't go for that. Now their parents, hell, remember 20 years ago, their parents were the young ones. Keep that in mind. Because I was praying next to them. And some of them were idealists, and they were like, yeah, we're gonna throw these oppressors off our backs, yours, your back and mine. And I would sit up and say in my head, if he means it, then great. And I prepare myself in case they don't mean it. But when it came to their own parents, they were not willing to look at their own parents and say, when it comes to your understanding of race and race relations in the West, you're just wrong. You worked and sent me to that private white school and they called me saying N-word every day. And when did they compare me to? The darkies, the Kala if you're Pakistani, or the Abid if you're Arabic speaking. They compared me to them all the time. And you sent me to school with them. And when I didn't want to be around them, you said, yeah, but what about your future? So my future means I got to go to school with these little bastards. These disrespectful to their own parents, drug abusing, swine eating bastards. Low-life pieces of shit. Whose soccer moms had them with side lovers and pool boys because they feel entitled to every goddamn thing in the world. So their dads ain't even really their dads. This is who you said I need to go to school with so that I can be like them. Yeah, they had these divisions. And someone set up in Dennis Spurling's chat and said if Palestinian had been women had been giving up the cheeks to brothers, we'd be out there in them streets. And I'm sitting up thinking, Palestinian women did not sit up here and not give up the cheeks to black men because we're black. They generally avoided fornication. I say generally. There were those that didn't. But you know, they just generally, if their parents and family were around, they just generally avoided fornication. They left it alone. And one of the reasons they did it is because they knew mother cuss word well, that they knew that for them to find a husband, they could be catching bodies. They could wait till they're married. But they couldn't be out here catching bodies. There's some of them that got stretched out butts to this day because when they're not married, they're able to gauge that with their boyfriends. Because they know you give up them drawers, you give up the actual vagina, then you get ruined, and somewhere down the line somebody finds out you're not a virgin. And I mean, you can either hide it until you're married and then your husband finds out and he sends you back home, or you could just sort of let the young folks know now without the parents, I'm not a virgin. Don't even show up trying to marry me. Because what if my parents say, yeah, and they agree, then what? You know, it's a mess with them. But it really didn't matter. I mean, it was like that when they were white dudes. Now, they could marry a white guy, that might be seen as a prize that they could get him to accept Islam. And that's assuming that the Palestinian is Muslim. A lot of Palestinians are Christian, about 15% in Palestine. But there are larger numbers of them, larger percentages of Palestinians in the communities that are Christian when you start getting into the Americas. And that's one thing a lot of y'all don't realize. That not all of them even Muslim. So I don't want black folk to keep making the mistake of thinking that Islam is just like every other religion. If it was just like every other religion, even though it's related to Judaism and Christianity, you could say, it can't be like every other religion. Every other religion? Well, for one, a lot of religions have multiple gods. How was this one just like them? Neither Judaism nor Christianity nor Islam are just like every other religion in that case. And truth be told, it is actually in this particular religion that you are not allowed to practice racism. You ain't got to like everybody, but you're not allowed to mistreat someone. That's in our faith, on the basis of their DNA. Slavery is a condition of war when you lose. That's how that comes about. You're supposed to treat them well and then free them over time. It is actually very similar to the slavery that was practiced between different tribes in Western Africa when they did fight with each other. And contrary to popular belief, most of our people in West Africa weren't busy fighting tribal wars all the damn time. That's also not the case. But when it did happen, there was a type of slavery that was, we know about that. A lot of us said, well, that was nothing like the chattel slavery of the Americas. Yeah, well, the Islamic rules on slavery were actually very similar. They wear what you wear, they eat what you eat, and over time you free them. And again, remember, this is regarding a people that used to be at war with you, so there's a reason you don't just free them right off the bat, but you might have them as slaves. There's a reason for that. And there are people nowadays who don't deserve freedom based on crimes they've committed. And there are blocks of people who need to be enslaved so that they learn what the hell it's like. Zionists need to be put in chains and made to work for people. But if they were enslaved by practicing Muslims according to the Sharia rules, they would actually have it too easy. It's too lenient to punishment for them. I don't want that. No, I want them enslaved by some folks that don't have these same rules to follow. That's what I want. I want their lives to just suck because of what they did to other groups of people, including the Palestinians. I understand, like you, that it's not right to it's not smart right now to get out there and put our necks out for Palestinians because, well, I mean, you've said it yourselves. Look how they view us. They don't. So don't get out there, put your necks out for them. Yeah, that's right. Don't do it. Don't do it. But also understand, don't turn around either and then start putting credits in the debit section and putting debits in the credit section. The Arab slave trade is older than Islam. And the Arab slave trade mostly was about enslaving other Arabs because that's who they fought. Keep in mind, there were a few slaves that were not. If you look in the biography of the Prophet, peace be to him, most of the slaves were from other tribes. You had a few that were not. You had some Abyssinians that were slaves, but Abyssinia was also an empire they respected. You had a Roman slave, and some people say he actually wasn't Roman, Suhaib al-Rumi. Some say he was not Roman, Salman al-Farsi, and some say he wasn't even Persian. No, wait, I'm sorry. No, it's only Suhaib about that they say that about. Actually, I take that back. No, Salman was Persian. Clearly he was Persian. And he wasn't even taken as a captive of war. He was kidnapped. He ran from his family because of a prophecy actually amongst his own people. A prophecy of a prophet to come, and he was looking for this prophet. And part of the life story between him leaving his family to go look for this prophet and finding this prophet involved him being captured or kidnapped and sold. And he was later liberated. But the other thing too is Then Spurling said, well, it's right there in the Quran. If you read it, the Quran does not really make mention of whether or not Muhammad himself owned slaves. It makes mention of certain rules that you have to follow, and then they're also in another source called the Hadith. It's like a historical source that is used in order to preserve the examples that we are to follow in greater detail. Now, the reasons that the Hadith were even recorded are based on Quranic verses, that in the messenger you have the best of examples. So because of that, there were people who began to record what they could so that it would always be available for reference later on so that people could best follow the example of the messenger. Now, Mr. Spurling also turns around and says, well, this is the reason that they made a big distinction between themselves and between the Islam that the others follow. But they recognize the great prophet Muhammad. Well, actually, they changed the religion into something else. Now, there is a reliable source apparently that says that Elijah Muhammad on his deathbed did say that we're going to go into the truth, and that his son Warith Deen was going to lead that because his son had done the studying. However, when you repent, your repentance has to be just as public as whatever you did wrong. So if you offend someone publicly, you apologize publicly. If you preach something wrong publicly and then you repent, you turn around and preach the right thing publicly. You do that publicly. If he was on his deathbed, then you would call in witnesses and you would say, all of you spread this word. I don't know why there weren't more that did it. So I'm not going to sit up and say anything about the validity of this according to what he could have done. But what I am saying, though, is that even according to reliable sources, Elijah Muhammad did not stay on that. So that means that Farrakhan, as entertaining as he is, and as politically astute as he is, didn't do what Elijah said. And that's if Farrakhan even heard about it from a reliable source himself. But I have it from a reliable source who met Farrakhan, that he asked Farrakhan at one point in a conversation, what is the reason that you didn't go to what Warith Deen did? And he straight up said, I know, man, he's on something that's correct. Warith studied. The issue was that a lot of our people just couldn't handle it. So in a nutshell, when you first apply this solution that I've said is the solution, it will be sort of like pouring peroxide on a wound. At first, it's going to bubble up. That's the problem. That's what I take issue with. Because some people even said, man, I'll never submit. Well, I think one person said, I'll never submit. And I asked the question, but then I had to change screens and go to something else. And I never know if he answered or not. But his answer, his original comment, I'll never submit, was completely unsolicited. If this is the solution, then the question would be, are you refusing to submit because you don't want to live a self-disciplined lifestyle? This part is the part that's jarring. This is the part where there's the burning and the foaming and the bubbling up. When you pour the peroxide on the wound, and we got wounds. That's the painful part in the beginning. And truth be told, that's why a lot of people sit up and say, well, I'm going to treat this one wound at a time. So they start with the peroxide on one wound, and then with the peroxide on another wound, and then on another wound, and then on another, instead of all at once. Brittany Renner has decided to apply this solution. And we don't know how much work she's actually doing on herself. And if she's actually staying on this path, hats off to her now. There's that peroxide that she's had to pour on, and it stings and it burns and it bubbles up. She took a Shahada, and then she took some more naked thirst trap pics. I don't even remember how long ago it was that she said she took a Shahada, but she said she hadn't gotten busy. She hadn't fornicated. She hadn't bumped and grind in 8 months. And I'm not really sure how true that might be, but let's assume that it is true. Well, then she's walking the path. She's walking it. But she's going to, even she is going to face some of that bubbling and that burning of the peroxide on certain wounds that she has. What it means is that she's going through a process that is sometimes is painful because of certain wounds she's decided she's going to treat. Now, not everybody comes into the solution with these wounds per se. Some have minor wounds. A little soap and water is what they need. I lived a careful life when I was younger, as careful as I could be. Sometimes it was irritating as hell. But when I came into this solution, I didn't have a whole bunch of wounds that I had to pour peroxide on and just sit there and deal with the burning and the bubbling and all that pain at one time. I didn't have all of that going on. I didn't have a whole lot of trauma from the past for which I needed to find some way to heal so that I didn't bleed on people that didn't cut me. I didn't have that. I had other things going on, but that wasn't one of them. I didn't have to be locked up to find God, and I'm grateful that I didn't have to be in that position to find him. I'm truly grateful for that. I'm always going to look at black folk who didn't hear the message before they got locked up and say, okay, I wish you'd heard it before you got locked up. That's all. For your own benefit, I wish for that. I wish that was the case. But then I look at some others who heard the message out on the streets, couldn't accept it, got locked up, and then they started to see what it was about. And I'm like, so you had to be locked up in order to see the truth of the truth. You can't see the truth until you lose your freedom. What the F, man? The hell kind of nigger wisdom is that? And then you walk around the rest of your life like, I'm grateful for all the bad things that happened to me because they humbled me. So you can only be guided with pain, even though that's not how God made you. Okay. We're coming from that mindset. And in all honesty, that is one of the valid things that other groups of people that are Muslim but ain't black have against us when some of us come in, when plenty of us come in, but those of us with that particular problem do the most preaching. Well, the bad things in life come with a silver lining. Wait a minute. Now you're going to sit up here and start preaching a lifestyle that centers on suffering. Of course, they're going to look at you and say, the purpose of life is to worship. It's not to suffer. What kind of crap are you on? And they're going to walk away from you. They're supposed to do that. Your faith depends on you being kept so poor that you got to beg at the masjid. If you became financially well off and you were doing okay and didn't have to ask anybody else for anything, you wouldn't show up at the masjid anymore. That's your fault. What's wrong with you? So you can't have your finances and your faith in order at the same time. God didn't make you like that. You did. And that's probably a carryover from a religion outside of Islam from before you became Muslim. And when other people hear you talking that way, they have every right to say, this nigga's not developed. Not to mistreat you. Not that. But to understand that you as a person are undeveloped and you're now trying to preach that as some sort of cultural understanding of wisdom. Okay, now you want to drag other people into your non-development. The problem with these groups of people that look down on us and this anti-blackness that they have, but this is a problem. But the issue with that, what I keep trying to tell you guys, is that is about culture. It is not about the religion itself. The offense of the Arabs against our people is not because they're Muslim. It is because they're putting Arab culture in front of Islam. No one told them to do that except the Arabs who put the culture in front of Islam. They're the only ones that told them to do that. You know how I know? I can't socialize with Arabs where I live. It's not because I hate Arabs. I can't socialize with Arabs here in this country where I live because Arabs don't go to bed early. Now, we have to pray Fajr, which is by definition before the sun comes up. We are required to pray before the sun comes up. That's the Fajr prayer. We're supposed to be aware and alert when we say any of the five prayers. So how do I pray that prayer while being alert and focused on what I'm doing? By going to bed early so that I'm not exhausted when it's time to wake up in the morning for the prayer. That's how I do it. You know how they do it? These ninjas just go to bed late. They stay up late, socializing. Nobody wants to be the first one to go to bed early. So, because, the others will make fun of you for that. Yeah, imagine that. You Muslim, you're required to wake up early for Fajr. But the first one to get ready to leave to go to bed early gets made fun of by everybody else. Man, shuck this fit. And then the next morning, whoever is awake wants to call everybody else and wake them up. Are you up? Why don't you get up out my damn phone? Knocking on somebody's door. Get up for Fajr. Get up for Fajr. Don't sleep. No. Get out my damn face. You didn't want me to go to bed early last night. Fuck you. And I've had to cuss some of them out for that, hanging out with them late at night. And then I waited till Fajr came in because we're already up late. I'd wait till they would go to bed about 1 or 2 in the morning. I'd wait until Fajr was up, until it opened up. And I would go and pray it. Then I'd go to sleep in the morning after that and then get a knock on my door. We didn't see you at the prayer. That's because I prayed before you, dummy. That's why. I told you to let me go to bed early last night. Y'all, no, y'all want to talk all that crap and get into an argument. Okay, all right. Now I'm arguing, cussing you out. I'm too angry to sleep. Well, this is what happens. Now get out my face before I break your jaw. Sick of you. And now when Arabs sit up and say, dude, you want to go and would you like to go to the desert this evening and have dinner with a bunch of us? No, thank you, because you niggas are going to be up until about 2 in the morning. And I would like to be alert for Fajr prayer. No joke. I tend to go to bed after the evening prayer, the last one of the day. I tend to do that not because I'm holy per se, but because it just makes the next prayer in the morning easy, and then it makes the rest of the day easy. I'm up early, alert. My wife has made jokes about that. You're like an old man. And I've told, last time she said it, and I told her, if you don't close your goddamn mouth, I'll throw you out this car. I'm like an old man. Do you want to wake up for Fajr or do you want to sleep through it? So you can't go to bed late and get up early? What if I can't? Say something about that. You're going to find yourself by yourself fucking around with me like that. I don't play these games. F culture. Culture is to stay up late, but religiously you got to wake up early for which one do you think I'm going to put on top of the other? And you're going to make jokes about that? How dare you? And she accepted the correction. She's like, oh, damn, that was messed up. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, if you're putting God's commands over, and yeah, you're right. You were right for doing that. Keep it up. So hats off to her. That was mature on her part. Now, that wasn't the first time I corrected her, so I still had to correct her and say, yeah, but see, we talked about this before. Your response was very adult-like and mature, but didn't we go through this already? Yeah, I forgot. I bet you're going to remember next time. They're putting the culture above the religion. They've been doing that, and a lot of black folks turn around and do that, want to put the culture in front of and over the religion. And they wrong. That's what the issue is. The reason that we should not be out there marching and protesting along with them, let's not lose sight of what the hell it is. The reason is not because of the religion. The reason is because of what they understand that it means to be their color and to not be black. That's why. When it comes to Latin Americans, mejora la raza, improve the race. Okay, I've heard young Arabs that I've taught. Some of them have told me that their aunts and uncles have said, wait, you'd be willing to marry a Filipina if she was Muslim? You'll damage the race. That's what they say.
You ruin the race. I'm like, that's what they told you? Yeah. Some of them have told me that their family members have said this to them. And I'm like, God damn. And they said, yeah, racism is a problem in the culture. It's against the religion, but it's in the culture. And that's why things are changing now. And that is true. That is a lot of why things are changing here. Did you think old folks were pressuring the government to make racism illegal? No, they weren't doing that. It was young folks that were like, look, I'm sick and tired of being in tribal fights in these high schools because of this stuff. Yeah, they used to fight about tribes here. First, it was war. About 20 years ago, they were still fist fighting in universities about tribes. But it's because of the culture, not because of the religion. You don't blame Catholicism when these Catholic Latinos sit up and say, mejora la raza, improve the race, as a command form. I mean, do you blame the church for that? And fuck the shuck up when Arabs start coming with the same stuff. They're put the Latino that's doing that is not really following Catholicism. He may never go to mass. Well, it is the same thing when you got some Arab or some Pakistani with some pro-white understanding of race saying dumb stuff like this. It's not because of the religion. It's in spite of what God revealed. Keep that in mind. If you don't want to accept the religion, then admit you don't want to wake up early for that prayer that I talked about. You don't want to give up that liquor. You want to still go to parties. And the funny thing is, you will refrain from drinking all the work week. You will refrain from partying all the work week because you got to go to work. You'll get up early all during the work week because you got to go to work. But just admit, you don't want to live a disciplined lifestyle. Even though you've already proven you're capable of doing it for work, you don't want to live that disciplined lifestyle. And when you realize that you're actually very capable of it and you're already doing it, all you need now is another reason to do it, a better reason. That's what this is. A better reason to live a disciplined lifestyle you already can and have lived before. But be honest, if you're not going to accept it, be honest. Now, if you're theologically convinced that that's not the last revelation, okay, yeah, stay where you are. You might as well anyway. You're not convinced. You can't be one of us if you're not convinced. You would just be calling yourself one. We're not asking you to fake it, but I am asking you to be real with yourself about what the reason is, because it doesn't hold water if you keep on blaming the culture of these non-black folks. Well, I'm sorry, if you keep blaming the religion of these non-black folks for what they're doing in their culture in spite of the religion. We just got to be clear about that. It ain't personal. I'm not saying this out of hatred, nothing like that. I'm saying this so that we can keep everything in its proper section. That's what it is. And no, absolutely not. We're not to be out there marching with them right now. And it's not going to be just about, can we bone an Arab woman? It's not just about that. It's more so about because, if they're practicing Christians or Muslims, generally speaking, they don't believe in fornication being okay. Even when they do it, they don't believe it's okay. So you have to start understanding that it's not going to be about just, can you clap cheeks? Can you clap this Arab woman's cheeks? And a lot of Arab women actually are partial to black men nowadays. Black Arab women, maybe not, but the semi-black, not quite black Arab women, yeah, they are partial to black men nowadays. But they're still going to choose the one that's Muslim over the one that's not. That's not personal. They do that with white guys. A white guy that's Muslim, he has a better shot than the one that's not. So I don't want y'all to get that twisted. And I've seen, I taught a student. Her dad they were Pakistani, but her dad was a bit of a blacktivist. And here she is now at her big age, because she was my student in the States at a Muslim school long time ago. And now here she is on Facebook with these white boyfriends. And I think she married one, and they got their little dog that lives in the house with them, even though that's against our rules. ownership of a dog for a reason. It's not. You can have a guard dog, things like, but in the house, and there she is, just, no hijab, short shorts on with a white husband she finally managed to bag. I don't even know if they're still married. She's been going through white boyfriends like draws because they don't stay. At some point, she's like, well, if we're going to get married, you're going to have to be Muslim. And they're like, I'm not accepting that saying N-word religion. You have to, because they find a way to be white, if that's a part of their identity. And you got to keep in mind that what we're going through is not because of the religion. It is because they discard that to side with the oppressor, because they understand that that is the definition of what it means to be white. And that's what I wanted you all to keep in mind. Those are two different things. Don't get them twisted. And it's and don't take it personal. Some of you guys that think that your manhood is still tied to where you can stick your ding-a-ling and where you can get abroad to consent to you sticking it. You have to understand that that's not going to be a measurement of whether or not you ally yourselves with them or whether you don't. Now, if they refuse to marry you when you meet the conditions that somebody else would have had to meet in order to marry them, you then have the right to at least question why. Hold up, if I meet the conditions, what's the deal? And even then, you got to understand that the racism, see, if she's like, listen, I'm just not interested in a black man for marriage. Okay, that doesn't make her wrong or a bad person right then and there. Now, if she says her culture is against it, then you have the right to turn around and say, hold up, who the hell are y'all to be against that? And then you also have another right. And that is to say, now, so you're like, no, I'm not interested in black men. Fair enough. But if I'm not interested in one of you that's not black, and I refuse that kind of marriage, when a dad comes to me, a non-black dad comes to me and tells me, listen, my daughter's looking for a husband, y'all should meet. And I'm like, I need to ask this first, is she black? Am I racist? That's how you know. If they're just not interested, but they understand your right to not be interested in women of their race, then they're just not interested. They're not biased. But if they're uninterested and they don't understand why you would turn down one of them, and you're not interested in marriage to one of them, and you're not interested in marriage within their race, then that's a person that's racist because they don't understand equality. That is that thin line in between a preference and inequality. I have the right to not be interested in you because of your DNA, but a man of your DNA does not have a right to be uninterested in someone of my DNA sequence. Okay, see, now you don't understand true equality. And that's where you got Arabs on that racism. You do have them on that. You just got to go about it the right way. There's been a Jordanian woman that sent a message to me once, and it was an innocent message. But she said, don't let anybody know I asked you to talk to this person. She was asking me to talk to another American, about a legitimate topic. She meant no harm. But she said, listen, but to keep our reputations intact, just don't let anybody know that I gave you this call and this sort of thing. I said, well, how'd you get the number? Well, y'all might remember Sandra. Yeah, Sandra, that from my previous uploads, who was letting this South African Indian bang her out, that she didn't know had black blood, while telling us that black men should not be with women of other races and stuff like that. Yeah, that's Sandra. Well, let me tell y'all about it. She was the one that gave this Arab lady my number. And I said to the Arab lady, listen, don't worry. I'm not telling people that you gave me a buzz. I'm not doing that. And don't worry about Sandra, because Sandra knows I marry only my own race. And she was like, wait a minute, you mean you don't deal with white women? And I wrote back to her and I said, if you're talking about as a Muslim sister, yes, of course. You're talking about marriage, romance, and everything that comes with that. Well, no, I only do that within my own race, and I'm black. And she said, oh, okay, yeah, I see what you mean. At first, I thought you were being harsh, but now I see what you mean. In terms of marriage, yeah, that's normal. That's your right. You see, she understands equality. She's one of the individuals that does. And Jordanians generally do. When you start dealing with some of these others and you're like, look, you pretty much, even if it ain't true, you just act like, look, I only marry women of my own race. And you're black, oh, you're a racist. Okay, see, now I know you're the racist because you don't understand equality. That's where you got them. That's why it is that you don't march for them. They think there's some right they have to protect their race. And some of them have even said protect the white race, meaning just don't become any darker, even though they're not actually white like that. Some have even said that, and they don't even hate you. But they think that's a legitimate concern for them, despite the fact they pray 5 times a day to a God that don't care nothing about that. But then when you're like, protect the black race, huh? Well, that's racist. Oh, fuck you, you hypocrite motherfucker. You don't have to hate me or lynch me or commit violence against me. You can't even remember that I'm equal. Why don't you go and get your ass lost in the desert so nobody sees you again? Sick of you. Nobody needs you. That's why you don't march with them. And most of the young ones do believe in an alliance. I'll tell you that. A lot of them do believe in some sort of alliance. They don't fully know how that's going to work because they're young, but they do believe in it. However, they will listen to the elders when it comes down to it. And so you still have to say to them, you might mean well, but your elders ain't shit. And until the day you don't follow them anymore, there can't be an alliance because they can't be allies. Best of luck to you. We chillin'. I hope this helps out. Thank you for listening. As always, Black Heart, Black Mind, Blackout. Assalamu alaikum and black heterosexual non-select male power. Just because they don't like it in a black patriarchy until extinction of judgment day. Thank you for flying with us again here on this long-ass Jet Black Airways flight, where the phrase jet black's also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender justice forever.